Flat selected. Screen recording. App switcher. Close. Activate. Default. Dryads riddle. Active. Dryads riddle. Home. Dryads riddle. Show stats. A not so long time ago, in a place quite nearby actually, a young child heard of a legend. A legend of a mythical creature that could only be summoned by the brightest minds and sharpest of wit. Once summoned, the creature would reward those they deemed worthy with treasure beyond their wildest dreams. You of course are this young child, and you are about to embark on a journey. A journey that will test your mind to its very limits with riddles and puzzles that will have you scratching your head in confusion from the start, and ripping your hair out in frustration before this is over. If you fear you do not have the brains to complete this quest, turn back now, for your journey is about to begin. Ellipsis. Next chapter, button. Found you, your friend Lucas declares as he pokes his head round the corner, finding your hiding place beneath a crumbling archway of the abandoned church on top of the hill. No fair, Sophie told you where I was, you say accusingly, pointing at your sister who was trying to steal your hiding place only a minute ago and who you clearly saw leading Lucas up the hill, straight towards you. I'm bored of this game anyway, Sophie tells you. Let's play something else. Like what? You ask. I'll race you both down the hill, Lucas announces as he sits himself on the ground. Lashed one to the bottom is a little girl. He challenges you both before he starts rolling. I'm no little girl. I might be a girl, but I'm checked. Next, button. Ever the competitive one, you practically throw yourself down the hill, rolling as fast as you can until you overtake Lucas and beat both him and Frey to the bottom. I win, you cry out, victorious. Unfortunately, you are so dizzy from the experience that you can barely stand. Oh look, it's the tree, Lucas tells you, picking himself up and directing your attention to a large, ancient tree, both coated in and surrounded by a bed of autumn leaves. Is that the one we carved our names in last year? Asks Sophie. Let's see if they're still there. The three of you gather round to inspect the tree and sure enough your names are all clearly visible, carved one after another in the tree bark. First Lucas, then Sophie, and finally your own name. Olivia, radio button. Emily, radio. Chloe, radio button. Checked. Isabel, Hannah, radio button. None of these are my name. Next, button. Chloe, right underneath the names of your best friend and your sister. The three of you are practically inseparable in day-to-day life, so it's fitting that your names should all be together in the bark of the old tree. Hey look, the fairies are back. Sophie cheers and you and Lucas quickly head over to her to see what she's talking about. Oh, will you stop with the fairies? Lucas complains. You talk about them every time you see a toadstool. They're not toadstools, they're mushrooms, Sophie corrects him, folding her arms and looking quite sulky. And it's not just one, it's a ring of them. Grandma told me the mushrooms only grow where the fairies stand, and they grow in circles like that because the fairies dance around in circles. If you step into the circle, you'll be able to see and hear the fairies, but you can't stay there too long or they'll take you away to be a slave in the fairy kingdom, and no one will ever see you again. Not if you're smart, you remind Sophie. You don't believe in all your grandma's old fairy stories, but you still remember them better than your sister does. Grandma told me that if you're smart enough to outwit the fairies, you can escape from the fairy ring and the fairies will be so impressed that they'll reward you with treasure better than any you could imagine. Well, why don't you jump in the circle then? Lucas dares you both. No way, Sophie refuses. I'm not letting the fairies take me away. Why? Are you scared you're too dumb to get out? Lucas teases. Oh, stop arguing, you scold them both. There's no such thing as fairies anyway, look, I'll show you. And with that, you jump into the center of the fairy ring. Next, button. A few seconds pass and nothing happens. No treasure appears, no fairies come to take you away, nothing. Maybe it only works at night, Sophie meekly suggests. Don't be stupid, Lucas tells her sister, starting to walk away. I'm not stupid, Sophie yells as she chases after him. Everyone knows that fairies don't come out in the day, otherwise everybody would see them. I don't want to talk about fairies anymore, Lucas says firmly, sounding rather bored of the whole thing. Let's go back to my house and have ice cream. Okay, declares Sophie, so easy to placate with the promise of sugary things. You are about to follow, when suddenly you hear a very faint sound. It is barely more than a whisper and you almost dismiss it as your imagination, but you swear you heard a voice saying, look inside the hollow. Turning around, you see that there is indeed a hollow in the old tree and you approach it to get a better look. Reaching into the hollow, you can feel your fingers brushing against something, so you scoop it up in your hand and pull it out of the tree. Opening your palm, you discover a small piece of parchment, rolled up into a tiny scroll. You unravel and to discover what looks like a riddle written inside. What has a bark but no bite? And a trunk but no tusks? Solve the riddle, radio button. Check, I can't figure it out, next, button. What is the answer? Text field. Double insertion point at end. Cap Y. Cap T. Tang, cap T. B. U. Y. T. R. R. E. 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 Space. Go. Tree, you say out loud. You were really only talking to yourself, but unfortunately for you, somebody else heard. Suddenly your surroundings start to look a little fuzzy. You think that maybe you should sit down for a while, but it soon becomes clear that this is far more serious than a simple dizzy spell. Everything is a blur and your entire world is spinning around you, trapping you inside the fairy ring. Eventually though, this bizarre experience passes. The spinning slowly ceases and the world seems to go back to normal. What the heck was that? You ask yourself, completely bewildered and frankly terrified by the whole experience. Lucas, Sophie, how old were those cheese strips we ate earlier? You call out, but turning around you see that neither your friend nor your sister are anywhere in sight. In fact, the world isn't how you remember it at all. The hill is behind you like it always was, but the crumbling remains of the ancient church are not crumbling remains at all. A new church building stands in its place, tall and proud without so much as a smudge on the stained glass windows. Ah, it's been a long time since one of your kind entered my domain. You hear a soft, feminine voice speaking behind you. You solved my little riddle, I see. Quite impressive for one so young. Next, button. Willow. PNG. In that moment, you are practically frozen to the spot. Where did the voice come from? There wasn't anyone behind you a second ago. Ever so slowly, you turn around, thinking that a stranger must be been hiding behind the tree. But to your shock, you discover it is the tree itself that spoke. Two slits in the tree's bark open wide, revealing a pair of green eyes looking straight at you. With a yelp of shock, you stumble backwards, tripping over yourself and crushing several mushrooms as you do so. With a groan, the eyes move slightly forward, causing an almost human face to appear in the bark of the tree. Autumn leaves make up the creature's hair, curling vines become her eyelashes, and with a shift of her branches, two arms are formed at her sides with long, pointed twigs for fingers. Well, that was foolish, the tree says to you. How do you expect to return home now that you've destroyed my portal? For a few seconds, you can only stare at the tree woman in silence before you finally work up the courage to open your mouth once more. Are you a fairy? You ask. The creature scoffs at your question, seeming to take offense at the idea. Fairy? Child, do I look like a fairy to you? Oh, why do I even ask? No doubt you've never even seen one in your life. But no, girl, I am not a fairy. No doubt those attention-seeking pests have been taking credit for my portals. It doesn't surprise me. I bet you human children still think it's the fairies that come and collect your baby teeth from under your pillows, don't you? Just as well, I suppose. I doubt you'd sleep so well if you knew it was really Tommy Rawhead, come collecting children's bones. Years ago, the teeth were left as some kind of... The creature scoffs at your question. Next, button. Then what are you? You ask the tree. At that, she smiles, looking rather proudly down on you. I, girl, am a Dryad. You have heard of us, I hope? Forest nymphs, spirits of the trees. You may call me Willow if you wish. But no need to introduce yourself to me, Chloe, I know very well who you are. Wait, how do you know my name? You ask, slowly starting to feel braver and getting back to your feet once more. Such a foolish question, and there I was thinking you'd be bright after you solved my riddle. I know your name, girl, because you were one of the 3 pastry children kind enough to carve your names into my bark back in the human world, Willow tells you, folding her branch arms and looking rather bitter about it. Your little gesture of friendship gave me a headache for a month, I'll have you know. Ah, you mumble, feeling quite guilty. Sorry about that. Oh, no matter, the Dryad says, waving her branch hand dismissively. After all, I'd say in this case the punishment far outweighs the crime, since it doesn't look like you'll be seeing those little friends of yours anytime soon, not for the rest of your natural life at least. Next, button. What are you talking about? You ask Willow, not at all liking where this conversation is going. What's happened to Lucas and Sophie? Where are they? Absolutely nothing has happened to your friends, Willow tells you. And I imagine they are right where you left them. It is you that is lost, I'm afraid, though I'm surprised you haven't noticed that already. Pausing for a moment, you take in your surroundings once more. You know, I think I have, you admit. But what is this place? An alternate reality, almost? Willow suggests. I would imagine so. This is the realm of dreams, my dear, and while they might extend beyond the reaches of your own imagination, what are mortal dreams based on if not reality? Next, button. Looking around, you must admit that while everything seems very real, it is all slightly distorted. The hills are too tall, the flowers have too many petals, the tweeting of the bird sounds more like the music of wind chimes, and was the sky always that shade of pink? Now you think of it, you're not sure you can even see the sky. Your senses are all mixed up. It's almost as if you can hear the colors and see the sounds. I don't feel myself at all, you say, starting to feel very concerned. No? Asks Willow. Well, perhaps you are not yourself. Maybe you're somebody else entirely. How would you know? I wouldn't, you admit, all your thoughts a jumble. Did what Willow say even make any sense? You really can't tell what makes sense and what doesn't anymore. Does sense even exist? You don't know and you don't like it. Why did you bring me here? You ask Willow in frustration. Why can't you send me back? Don't you lay the blame on me, child, Willow scolds you. You brought yourself here. It was you that entered the portal and answered the riddle which was the key to our world. It certainly wasn't my plan to keep you here, but as you so carelessly crushed all my mushrooms, the portal is broken, I'm afraid that leaves you stuck. There's not a lot I can do about it, I'm afraid. Next, don't you lay the blame on me, next, button. But I can't stay here, you object. My friend and my sister are waiting for me, and my parents will throw a fit if I'm not back in time for dinner, and my dog Buster, Yes, you have a lot to go back home for, Willow interrupts, looking slightly frustrated by this whole ordeal. But I'm afraid there's precious few methods to send a mortal from our world back to yours, and fewer still that would get you there in one piece. No, I'm afraid the portal is the only safe bet I can think of, and you'd have to replace all the mushrooms to get it working again. Then I'll do that, you tell the Dryad. I'll just get some more mushrooms and build the portal again. They can't be that hard to find. Oh, can't they? Willow asks, in a challenging voice that suggests to you that they certainly can be that hard to find after all. I'm afraid that any fungi powerful enough to fuel a portal like mine are incredibly rare indeed. Why, in this whole village I can only think of 6. Well, that's a start, you say, optimistically. Tell me where they are and I'll go get them. Next, button. Are you sure? Asks Willow. I fear the task will be far more difficult than you think, child. You are not the only one who wants the mushrooms, you see, and to win them, you will have to pay. But things are done very differently in our world than they are in yours. Here, wit and wisdom are valued far more than gold or silver. That is why your riddle was the key to opening my portal. There will be far more riddles ahead for you. Puzzles and posers that'll test your mind to its limits. I'm sorry, Chloe, but I fear this quest is too much to ask for a child like you. But I have to try. You insist. It's the only way to get back home. Very well, the Dryad reluctantly agrees. In that case, I must at least prepare you by explaining to you the rules of our world, ellipsis. Next, button. Now listen carefully because these rules are very important, Willow tells you firmly. First, whenever you are required to write an answer, the answer will be only a single word or number with no gaps. For example, if I ask you a riddle and you believe that mountain is the answer, you must only write mountain, not a mountain or the mountain. The same applies to letters, so if you believe the answer to a riddle is the letter X, simply write X instead. That seems like a very strange rule, you tell Willow. Well, get used to it, because there's several more of them, she replies. Second, if the answer is a number, it must be written as a number, so if you believe the answer is 367, you must write 367 and not 367. Third, no punctuation marks of any kind should be included in your answers. No full stops, exclamation marks, question marks, quotation marks, commas or anything like that. And finally, not all riddles will require a written answer. Some may be multiple choice and some require a series of tasks you must perform. So, if you have no idea how to answer a question, try anyway and you may find that a written answer isn't needed after all. The rules can be found in your stats page. Next, button. I do hope you paid attention, because I'm not repeating all of that again, Willow tells you. I'll remember, you assure her. So where are these mushrooms then? How do I— Well, you are eager to get started, aren't you? Willow asks with a smirk. But I wouldn't be so quick to go off wandering on your own, my girl. This is the land of dreams after all, and you know nothing of our world and our ways. You will need a guide, I think, and as I am rooted to the ground, I'm afraid I can be of little help to you in that department. But fear not, young Chloe, for I have something I believe may be of use to you. That is, if you can prove yourself worthy of it. I have a test for you, child, another riddle. Solve it and you will be one step closer to getting back home. And if I answer wrong? You ask the Dryad. At that, Willow fixes you with a wicked smile. If you answer wrong, my dear, I will crush your fragile human bones and eat you alive. A look of terror comes over your face, but Willow only laughs at your expression. Oh come girl, what do you take me for? If you answer wrong, then you can guess again until you get it right. Don't expect me to give you any clues to hurry you up though. Living as the spirit of a tree will teach you patience, if nothing else. Okay, you say, extremely relived. So what's the riddle? Willow takes a breath and begins to recite a poem. At night I come to guide your path. Always whole but sometimes half. Always old but sometimes new. Never sad but sometimes blue. Never empty, sometimes full. Never pushing, always pull. Solve the riddle, radio button. I can— Next, button. What is the answer? Text field. Double tap, text field. Insertion point at end. Next, button, toolbar. Next, text, what, show stats, what, text field. Double tap to add insertion point at end. Cap C. Cap N, cap M. Cap M, my. R. T, Y, U, I, O. O. O, C. V, B, N. N. Dictate. Space, go. Moon? You ask, and the Dryad smiles in— Moon? You ask, and the Dryad smiles in return. There you are, girl, I knew you were a bright one. Oh, and speaking of bright things, ellipsis, with her long, branched fingers, Willow reaches into the tree hollow where you found the first riddle. Pulling her hand out once more, the Dryad opens her palm, revealing a tiny, white light inside. Wake up, my pet, Willow says softly. We have a visitor. A high-pitched, squeaky yawn comes from the little light in Willow's hand and suddenly the thing starts to levitate. Oh, hello Willow, the light says, very quickly. I had another dream about the mortal world. There were children and they were playing hide and seek and then they rolled down a hill and one of them jumped in the mushroom circle, so I told her where the riddle was and she solved it all by herself. But then she disappeared in the portal and I couldn't talk to her anymore. But it was okay because after that I saw a squirrel and I chased it all the way to ellipsis. Yes Luna, I know, Willow interrupts the tiny creature and gestures to you. Your human arrived just a few moments ago. Next, button. Luna. PNG, image. The light turns around and upon seeing you, lets out the most piercing squeal of excitement you've ever heard. A human, she cries before flying over to you and fluttering around, less than an inch away from your face. Willow, it's here. It's really here. My first human. I never brought one here before. Hello there, little human thing. Ah, ellipsis, hello? You mumble, slightly overwhelmed by the creature's excitement. Chloe, this is Luna, Willow introduces the pair of you to each other. And no, before you ask, she's not a fairy either. Our little friend here is Willow, the wisp. In your world I believe they are regarded as mischievous spirits set on leading humans off the beaten track until they are completely lost. True in some regards I suppose. In actual fact, wisps are the light between our worlds. They lead you mortals to the doors in your realm, like my own portal, that lead to the world of dreams. Now that you're here though, she will hopefully aid you in finding your way rather than getting you more lost than you already are. Ellipsis, Luna, she tells the wisp, I want you to help this human. They have very clumsily destroyed my portal and I'll need the 6 enchanted mushrooms to fix it. Yay! Luna cheers, clearly far more enthusiastic about this mission than you are. I get to play with the human. Yes, you get to play with the human, Willow says irritably. Just try to bring it back in one piece if it's not too much to ask. Next, button. This is going to be so much fun, Luna tells you. Don't worry, I'll be really helpful. I know where all the mushrooms are and I can show you the way, and I'm so good at solving riddles, so I can help you if you find one too tricky. But you have to stay close and not lose me because sometimes I forget what I'm supposed to be doing and I get very easily distracted. Ellipsis. Oh look, a butterfly. Luna starts to follow the butterfly and is only dissuaded when Willow grabs the wisp between two fingers, stopping her in her tracks. I'm sure the two of you will get along splendidly, Willow tells you, though she doesn't sound too sure of it herself. And trust me, Luna isn't quite as dim as she might seem. If you ever find yourself struggling to solve a riddle, you can ask Luna for help. She won't be able to answer the question for you, but she can give you a clue that might help. But what if I can't solve a riddle even when I have the clue? You ask. Next, button. Willow lets out a sigh before reaching into the hollow of the tree once more and pulling out a small leather pouch, tied with string. I really do not like parting with these, I'll have you know. There's nothing I detest more than a cheater, ellipsis, but I suppose you are very young and I cannot expect perfection from you. Here, child. And with that, Willow reluctantly hands over the pouch to you. This pouch, my dear, is filled with magic beans. Magic beans? You repeat. Like in Jack and the Beanstalk? Who and the what? Willow asks, baffled. Oh, it's an old story from my world, you explain. A boy called Jack plants a magic bean, and it grows into a beanstalk so tall that it reaches all the way up into the sky. Then Jack climbs it and it leads to a castle in the clouds where there's a giant and a goose that lays golden eggs and a harp that plays itself and, ellipsis, you know, magic stuff. Willow only laughs at your explanation. Magic beans growing a giant beanstalk that leads to a castle in the clouds? Why, I've never heard anything so ridiculous in all my life. I mean, how would that castle stay in the sky? What's to stop it from simply falling through the air and crashing down on poor Jack's head? Even the idea of a giant beanstalk makes no sense. A beanstalk can only get so tall before it collapses under its own weight. Then what do your magic beans do? You ask Willow. It's simple, eat one of these and you will instantly know the answer to any riddle you are having trouble solving, she tells you. But that doesn't make any sense either, you insist. It makes more sense than your castle in the clouds, Willow mocks you. But before you eat a single bean, there is one very important word of advice I must give you. What's that? You ask. But the advice that Willow gives you seems only to be another riddle, ellipsis. Next, button. Fear not to make mistakes or to waste our time. For to err as human and being human is no crime. The light will help to guide your path in times that you need aid. But with each use you'll see the light will slowly start to fade. 20 times and you will see the strain is too much to bear. And it won't be in any state to guide you anywhere. Now magic is a useful tool when you might feel stuck. But I warn you first that more than 10 will find you out of luck. For this is not a worthy tool for the brave and wise and clever. And only those who prove their worth will find the precious treasure. Willow's riddle can now be found in your stats page. Next, button. You understand? Willow asks you after reciting her riddle. I really don't, you reply. Wonderful, Willow announces. Then you're ready to begin. Now remember, find all 6 of the enchanted mushrooms and then bring them back here. Once you have them all, I will help you to recreate the portal and send you back home to your family. Good luck, and please try not to get hurt, ellipsis, or eaten, ellipsis, or buried alive or decapitated, or transformed into any kind of inanimate object. You never know really, the locals can be very unpredictable. Once a sprite turned me into a toothbrush, Luna declares happily. Took me weeks before I changed back and sometimes I still feel the urge to wash my hair in minty paste. That's so reassuring to know, you mumble sarcastically. So, where should we go first? You ask Luna. Well, I know one of the mushrooms is in that old church on top of the hill. Then there's one that's been in the school for years. I think there's one in the museum too, and I've heard there might even be one in the old, haunted house in the middle of Nightmare Forest, ellipsis. Oh, I nearly forgot. There's a mushroom at Mr. Chuckle's super happy carnival of fun and awesomeness. Can we go there first? Can we please? Luna begs, ellipsis. Well, that sounds slightly more appealing than the haunted house in Nightmare Forest, but the decision is yours. Next chapter, button. Map. PNG, image. Where do, the fun fair, the school, radio button. The clearing, radio, next, button. Luna guides you through the winding. 9:49, orient, 89% battery power, control center. Air, flashlight, low, flash, selected, screen,